Welcome to Gotta Run with Will. I'm Roger Robinson, and Will Sanchez has asked me to host this session because of my interest in the history of running and also in ways in which running has made history in a larger way than just within the sport. And the reason for that is that our guest today, Vincent Chiappetta, has contributed to both of those kinds of history. If the name of Vincent Chiappetta is not that familiar to you, you've certainly been affected by things that he has contributed to this sport. If you run the New York City Marathon, you've been affected by the man who effectively created it. If you run New York Roadrunner events, you've been affected by the man who set up much of that program. If you're a woman runner, then you owe a huge debt to the work that Vincent Chiappetta did 20, 30, 40 years ago to create opportunities for women runners. If you're interested in the wider culture of running, the books, the films, then Vincent Chiappetta has contributed in that too. And that's actually where I want to start today, because Vincent has surprised us in many ways, and never more so than just recently, when he's produced a book, and the book, instead of being perhaps the memoir of a lifetime in running that we might have expected, is in fact a book of poems. A book of poems and drawings, sketches, artwork, images that Vincent himself has created. Now, Vincent, that's not what we would have expected from you at this point. Tell us about this book. Tell us about this whole new breakthrough that you've done.
The breakthrough, I've been able to get it published, and I've been writing poetry since the 60s and and in the 60s I just decided that rather than pay for art, which I couldn't afford, I got myself a sketch pad and I started just seeing what I could do. And I've been doing that for many years too, and these are some of the results of it, to show my sense of the city. The artwork is based on space, color, and position of the things. It's non-representational, but forms around me that I see, I put together, like the cover, which looks like apartment buildings, are modifications of images that I've seen. And it was just fun to do.
And what about the poems? And what about the relation of these poems to your life as a runner? Because in some cases there are images that have come into your mind in the process of running around the city. Not always, so tell us a bit about those as well.
These are images around the city and New York State. Well, I always carry a pen and a pad in my book in my running. It's always with me, and every time I see something, sometimes I just stop and write something down, and many of these things are results of those images that I've seen. And then I compose them into poems later.
Would you like to give us an example? See, I thought everybody in New York is going to be familiar with 9/11.
Okay.
And one of your poems is a response to 9/11. Would you like to read that to us?
Okay. It's called Ground Zero. Actually, this involved, I lived in the village and I used to run down along that area all the time, and I was running along, and this came out of that. A speck of dust upon a shoe, not gray and black, but reddish of you. My stomach jolts. It is a part of tragedies defaced upon my heart. My head is on my chin to feel the sight of a dogged meal panting underfoot. He stands, eyes appeal to what I feel. Life is just an innocent. So I dog the dog to his grand glee. I smile up life, but dead smells see as flows in dust and flame around my nose. And so with very bones, I seek another hope in debris. So bleak are people in hide and seek, and oh no, it's smithereens. And so I was running along Washington Street at that time, and the dust and the smell was still very thick there, and this dog come up to me to get it petted. So I brought about the view, but the thing was, would you bring life after this? I mean, the problem of a sense of life. all those people dying, and yet the dog was in a sense of life.
Well, I wrote also about, in my book, When Running Made History, and one of those chapters is about New York on 9/11 and the New York Marathon after 9/11, and try to get that same sense, going down to ground zero about 4 or 5 weeks after, and again, that same sense of the detritus, the dirt, dust, this terrible cloud. And clearly there are a lot of people, writers, who have been trying to come to terms with that whole experience.
Yeah.
And in our case, it relates to running. That's not the whole of it, but it's connected with that.
It's our main area of running.
Yeah.
When you live down there, you run around the Battery. It was a 7-mile run for me. And many times after my lab work at night at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, then you got a workout in, go out there and run around there. And so when all this tragedy had happened, I've been running there for years. And the imagery that sits there all the time, I don't think that I run down there. Those towers are there all the time. They're just part of the run.
That's fascinating because that clearly was so important to you. I was in Central Park at that time, so I wrote about running in Central Park, which was certainly very moving and very powerful. It wasn't the same as for you, where this is right on, as it were, your regular running route.
Yeah.
So this is a way of just saying that here's somebody who's taking running as a subject for poetry and for saying something significant, which is not just about describing the sport, but describing a human reaction to human tragedy.
Well, remember, runners cannot run away from the whole process. Running is an area where your mind is always moving, it's thinking, it's reliving what your own life is. And therefore it's hard to get rid of what's going on around you.
Yeah. Let's take you back to something more like the beginning, because that's a very good cue into that. You've been a very significant figure in running. I've got a couple of people who said very high things about you. Gary Corbett said Vincent has not gotten the credit he deserves for his role in the early years of New York Roadrunners and the New York City Marathon. And then this is a nice one. Another writer, I won't name him, but he remembers you from when he was 16 years old. I knew him, he said, as part of a corps of hardy road racers who traveled around New England and New York, circuit of races in the 1960s. And he said, when I was 16, they all showed up in my town, Westport, for a 10-miler. Vincent Chiappetta, Kurt Steiner, Tom Osler, and Andy Burford, who won everything that year. So tell us about those very early days, and then we'll get on to some of the more familiar things. This is an era when people were going around road races all around New England and New York. Small group of you, hardy corps.
Well, you know, New England, very interestingly, had small towns. And for some reason or other, there was always some runner in a town that was interested in putting a race on. In New York, it was much harder. We had to build our own program. So when you get to run, when I started running on the road, it was 1951, my freshman year at NYU. And my first race out in New York was right around Yankee Stadium. We had the McCoonsden Park locker room there, which you want a place to change your clothes. It was safe. You could put all your stuff there. And they'd run races around Central Park, around the Yankee Stadium, or up Sedgwood Avenue. And so for the first time I ran on the road, and my coach had a fit over it. The road is too hard for your legs for track, and because I was there for track, but I didn't find that a problem. And it was great meeting these guys like Kurt Steiner and Joe Kleineman, Aldo Scandura, Kenny Aberson, the people who were Sam Swed, guys who were there every single week, making sure the races went on, no matter how many people showed up. In those days, less than 100.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You see, you went for a big race, you went to New England, you got 200. You went to Boston, it was 250, you see, in those days. So we were just beginners of the things. And what we wanted to do, the whole goal was we wanted to make the world run. Enjoy the pleasure of what they call the running high now. The pleasure of going there and running someplace and just feeling the environment around you. And that was our goal. So that's why we formed the Roadrunners Club.
Oh, that's interesting that you actually had some kind of missionary sense about it. You wanted to take it out to a wider audience.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. And I was in England at this same stage, and then later in New Zealand. We knew we were a bunch of skinny eccentrics, and we knew that what we did was of no interest to the major part of the population unless we were really good at track. And then it'd be different. Then 50,000 people would turn up to watch you, right, but not to run the road races. We were, as it were, on the fringes of society. And then this is what I wanted to get to, and you just cued it perfectly. One of the most significant things that happened in the history of running was you guys moved running into the center, into the community. And perhaps you had that, as it were, missionary objective to do that. And when you, that's what I want you to tell us about now, you'd had a Cherry Hill Marathon, but then you decided to call it the New York City Marathon and to move it into Central Park. Now that was significant because it was a real change in thinking.
Well, remember, Mayor Lindsay closed the park. And so those of us who had been running in the park ran it anyway, but we couldn't put any races on. It was for walking and biking. Uh-huh. And so the city administration stopped us. At that time, I was in charge of all the running here. And every place I went to their officialdom in Lindsay administration, no, we don't want to run. Nobody cares about running. And so it was pretty hard to get things going on that because they didn't see us as a force. In 70, the Cherry Tree Marathon was a decent day. Usually it rained, snowed, and everything else. And some guy came to run it. I didn't know about. I had run the race, scored the race, gave the prizes out, and had to leave because I had to give a lecture in the afternoon. And so I was trying to get into Central Park, but I couldn't do it. I get this phone call about 3 or 4 weeks later from a guy named Fred Lebo. Mm-hmm. And then he says, "My name's Fred Lebo." I says, "Well, who's Fred Lebo?" He says, "Well, I represent a group of millionaire runners who want to put a race in Central Park." And I says, "Really? Who are these guys?" He says, "I know everybody who runs." I said, Who are you?" He says, I know millionaires. I says, "Well, believe me, you don't. I know them all." I said, "So what's your point?" And he says, "Well, I represent the situation of money that we can put in Central Park and have a race." I said, "Well, look, I've been trying that for years." I said, "Now, let me ask you a question. Do you know anybody in the Parks Department?" "No." "Do you know anything about running?" "Well, I just started." I said, "Okay, would you do me a favor? Would you go to the Parks Commissioner and ask for a meeting? And say, you tell him that you're a millionaire runner. You know some millionaires that want to invest in the park and you want to put a race on, okay? And you go there and you tell him, we want to call it New York City Marathon or something like that." And he says, "Why should I do that?" I says, "Because nobody knows you. I know you don't know any millionaires, but they don't know that. So when you talk about money, maybe we can do something. And what you do, you know an internationally known marathon promoter you're going to bring to the meeting, which is me." Okay? So I said, see what happens. So I hung up and I said, "Oh, gee." So I did my run. I came back. I called up Kurt Stein. "Did you hear the guy Fred Lebo? He's always been bothering me like crazy about a marathon." I says, "Yes. So, well, how do you know him?" He said, "He ran Cherry Tree." I said, "Really? I didn't know that." And I'm not sure he did it either. So I said, "Okay." I said, "All right, well, I'll let you know what's happened, Kurt." So he gets a meeting with the Recreation Commissioner, who was Hayes Jones, the sprinter. Lindsay was going out to try athletes, particularly African-American athletes, to give them jobs. He got the job, okay? And I love Hayes. I had spoken to him already about it. He said, I can't do anything. I have no control. So Fred makes the appointment. So we had this meeting. And so I said, okay, I want to meet you. I have to know who you are, what's going on. So the week before, we met at Central Park. And we sat down and talked and so forth. And he said, well, let me take you out to dinner. I said, no. Well, we'll have a cup of coffee. I'm a coffee guy. You got a cup of coffee? I got a cup of coffee. We'll talk. So we talked all about the whole thing. And I said, look, Hayes Jones knows me. Don't tell him that I'm coming, okay? Because he already knows the things I've been doing. But you just keep promoting the idea about the millionaire marathons. That's the key. So we went to Central Park to meet Hayes, and we're walking up the Arsenal steps, and out comes Hayes. So I says, Hayes, where are you going? He says, I just quit. I said, what do you mean you quit? We got a meeting. Oh, I knew it was you. Okay. So I said, okay, what do you mean you quit? And he said, you were right. I can't get anything done. Nothing I want to do works. There's always somebody restricting me. And so I quit. He says, I didn't quit. He quit. So he said, look, go see my assistant. His name was Ray Narat, he had a job because he was Herman Badilio's campaign director. So we had to make a living between times. So he was assistant recreation commissioner. So we went to see him. And so I said, Fred, just tell him the story before. So once he talked about money, and Fred was, and I realized this guy's really a con artist. He's good, you know. And so this guy Ray was really very excited about it, but he knew nothing about running. So he said, Mr. Norat, is there anybody here we could talk to arrange this type of thing? I think you're interested. It's a good idea. Mr. Jones is not here. She says, well, look, I'll give it to two of my friends, two of my assistants. Joe Letzberg and was one of them, and Ray, I forgot his last name, Ray, were two professionals. So we went and talked to them, and they loved it. So Ray comes out with the typewriter. He says, tell me exactly what you want to do. So he wrote 5 pages of how to put a marathon in Central Park. And he said, I said, what's going on? He says, well, we like it, and the boss is not here. We can do what we want. So they went and took the thing out, the 5 pages, took to the Central Park commissioner, who knew me already. I said, don't tell him I'm here. I said, no, we're not playing. He says, he got them signed it, gave us a permit number. He didn't read it, but since these guys asked for it, now here we had a copy with a permit on it of putting races on in Central Park. Now this is 4 years of hard work. It didn't work.
And you've got effectively the first major marathon. Major yet.
Anything in running, right.
But it's right in the middle of the city.
Right there. Because we used to run the ADA, the American Dairy Association, ran the milk run every year, which started at Central Park near Columbus Circle. We ran around Central Park and ran up to Mary Cortlandt Park to finish it. Mm-hmm. That's all I ever did. Yeah. So I get this thing. I said, what can I do with this? He says, you really what? I said, so I said, okay, all right, how do I do it? I got your phone numbers on everything. He said, just call us up.
So you and Fred were the team. I mean, Fred was the razzmatazz and the con artist, and you knew.
And I had the knowledge.
Put the two together, and
so we get this thing, and I was stunned because we wouldn't have gotten it from Haynes because but these guys could do anything they want. So Joe Retzberg was the fellow's name. Dave Lassane and Joe Retzberg, wonderful men. And so we said, okay. So I said, let's sit down and talk. You interested really in being involved in this? Yeah, well, I like this. I said, okay, good. All right, I just want you to keep talking about these millionaires. Okay, I'll do everything else. So immediately sat down. I spoke to the the guys, Road Runners Club guys that were the executive committee, and nobody agreed with it. Nobody liked it except for Kurt Steiner and Joe Kleineman. The rest of it, that was a waste of time. I said, no, this is where we're going to go. We got to get out of Yankee Stadium area. So we sat down. I typed up an entry blank, and I put Fred's name on the entry blank, okay, because because Fred promised the money. So I put his name on as co-director because I wanted to make sure he was stuck. So once he first saw his name there, he was in. So his roommate paid for the race. We organized the whole thing in Marathon. Ted Corbin and I set up a race course in the park for it, and we sent entries out. And we got 156 entries. And 126 showed up, and we started it.
And can I just do a transition into another topic now? Among that, how many showed up? 120?
126.
126. One of those was a woman called Nina
Cusick, right, exactly.
And so right from that very start, there was no exclusion of
never.
women. Nina was the only one who wanted to run. She didn't actually finish the race, but because she was sick, if I remember. But let's just transition into that, because it's been another part of your really significant contributions to the sport of running, that right from that point, you saw no reason to exclude any woman that wanted to run. So pick it up from there, Vincent, and tell me that story and what you did and how you worked to create opportunities for
From
women.
63, New York Road Runners Club group said, our race is for everybody by age and gender. And then gradually women would start. Now we had some up in Boston that ran, and wives would start the races, do all sorts of things to try it. Okay, it wasn't really until later on, like Nina started running races earlier than that. Okay, and Kathy came in just around that time too, because I think she ran Boston in '68 or '7, right?
67 was Kathy.
67, right?
Yeah.
So they were invited. I mean, they were told that to be there, and this type of thing. And the idea was, we got to get women into this. The Women's Track and Field Committee, locally and nationally, wanted nothing to do with it. Remember, in the 1920s, 1928, the marathon was hot in the Olympics, extremely hot. Most of the runners didn't finish. And they banned women from running anything over a half mile except cross country.
Can I just clarify that story very, very briefly? What this actually was the 800 meters in the Amsterdam Olympics, where all the journalistic reports claimed that the women had all collapsed. In fact, when you look at the footage, only one woman fell over. It's a different story. I think I may have told it on Will's program before.
Yeah.
But this whole kind of conspiracy to agree that women were incapable of running distance.
Well, that's the hard part.
It was just amazing, just how the journalists kind of united and saying things like 11 wretched women was one headline, when in fact there were only 9 women in the race, and they all finished. Anyway, that's
I remember they all finished.
Yeah,
I know, but it was horrible, and it filtered down through all the track and field except for cross country, okay? And we were having people that wanted to run, okay? And Boston was stuck with it. They were forced into it because women just ran the race. And so things like that. But they didn't want to accept it at all. And it took us 3 years to get them to finally accept it.
So you did a whole lot of committee work, going through the rules and regulations, working with Nina and others.
Well, I told, look, you girls have got to come to the conventions. You have to go to track and field, and we made them members of track and field by being local women members from New York City, New York's AAU thing, and that way they had credentials. And you go to the meetings, and you point out what you like to do, okay? And at those meetings, they were just ridiculed, basically. As a matter of fact, one said to Nina, And Kathy was there too. And it was on Lake Placid. Says, I don't believe you people ran that far. And I says, so I said, what do you mean? Of course they did. You know very well what I do. You know what I promote down there. If I say they do it, they do it. So it's too hard for women. And then the male coaches were worse than the women's coaches in one extent on this, in blocking this. And but finally, you just had to accept it.
Well, viewers probably know that Catherine Switzer is my wife, and when I first told her that I was going to meet you on this broadcast, the first thing she said was, he did more than almost anyone to get acceptance for women's running.
Well,
and she was part of, she's the Kathy that you're referring to.
Right. And a great leader in the whole building of the
she
material.
and Nina and Jackie Hansen in California did a lot of the actual work.
And what's her name? I'm in Boston too. I can't think of her name.
Yeah, it's Sarah May.
Sarah May.
Yes, Sarah May Berman.
Right.
Yes. So we're getting, viewers, you're getting history now from the inside, from the grassroots, because this is something that hasn't been widely written about, and Vincent has a perspective on this which is more kind of, in a way, domestic and detailed than most. Fred was the great operator.
Well, that was later on, as he became as they grew. Yes, Fred became a very important type of image for everything, and had that know-how, and which is why, of course, I moved to get Fred as president. Yeah, because we needed somebody with his type of moxie.
And he could bring in the Playboy bunnies for the...
and that was part natural for him. Yes. But the thing is, too, is that running has always been the sport for liberation. Yeah. There were racist things going on, and running, you couldn't do it. You could be a racist club, you can do anything you want, but you couldn't bring it into the race. Both track and field, as well as road running especially. Women were fine for this too. And that's the whole key. You provide something, and you'll be surprised where all the people are who really want to have fun doing it. Yeah.
That leads us into a related topic. People probably don't know that one of the very best novels ever written about running is this one by Patricia Nell Warren, called The Front Runner. And in my book, Running in Literature, I referred to it like this. I said it was one of the best novels, and actually the best novel by a woman writer. Patricia Nell Warren, The Front Runner, 1974, is running's best love story. I said, just let that sink in, because then there's something different happens in the next sentence. The passionate gay love between an outwardly militaristic college track coach and his star athlete is interwoven with Billy's rise to the Olympic 10,000 meters title, with some vivid and fully human insight into gay culture and lifestyle, and with the whole complex of phobias and exclusion tactics provoked by successful gays in sports in that era. Now, you knew Patricia Nell Warren, and you know the story of this book, and you know, I think, how the title of that book, The Front Runner, then became the title of a running club. Right. Tell us that story.
Well, the running club was here in New York, and a whole number of athletes, of course, were gay, and they wanted to form a club. And I was involved with all the AAU, which was the governing body aspects of sport in those days. And they petitioned to become a club in Metropolitan AAU. And they were rejected. And so I got up and pointed out to them that there are no restrictions as far as who the type of runner is. You're finally beginning to agree that women can run. I said, these are gay men or women who want to form a club. They want to call it the Front Runner, based on a wonderful book by Patricia Nell Warren. And I said, many of you have read it, and we know it's a great book on that. And what's wrong with this? oh, we can't associate with these things. I said, we're not associated with anything. We're associated with running. And our view is we support running. If these people want to form the front runner running club, they're runners who want to make the front runner running club. I don't care what book it came from. It's a fine word. We have to agree to this. And they didn't agree. So the next meeting, we met again, and we talked. We brought it up again, and I said, "Okay, what are we doing about this?" And we talked about it, and a lot of people, because we had track meets and all stuff about it, and they said, "You're absolutely right. Running is a place for everybody."
And that date was about 75, 76, something like that?
Yeah, somewhere, yes.
Yeah.
So they will vote, the unanimous vote.
So then the club got
And
accepted.
then we accepted it.
Well, and I ran I think it was called at that time the Gay Pride
Gay Pride Run.
5 mile or something like that.
Yeah.
I
It still is on. It's one of the longest running events in Central Park.
Catherine and I ran it one year when we wanted to get purple T-shirts to give to some lesbian friends in New Zealand who were getting married. And it's a funny story because they didn't give T-shirts that year; they only gave purple socks. But anyway, these women ended up with purple socks as their wedding present as a result of that race. So lots of people run that race, and it has a real place in the New York calendar. Yeah. So you actually pushed it through. Well, all credit to you for doing that. And in this era, with our consciousness of these matters increased at present, it was a real achievement.
I think the achievement was the realization, regardless of our background, and believe me, one is just as absent-minded and prejudiced about everything in the world that way, but that because it was a running issue, these men and women said, it's a running thing, we should agree to it. Yeah. And that's the key. And that's why they finally in the end agreed to unlimited sports for women in amateur athletics. Yes. Because of the women in long distance running. And that expanded the whole thing from field hockey and a few other things like that you're allowed to do.
Oh, running was at the forefront.
And then the distance running thing just blew. Yeah. It spread the whole world, and the women who couldn't do track became distance runners. Mm. They could jog, they could run. And it didn't matter how big you were, how small you were, you could do it.
And look what's happened now. Yeah. With that huge explosion.
And Pat's book was also initiation to the fact that in the gay world, even though there always were gay athletes in the closet, in the gay world, even a funny-looking gay guy or woman could go out and run if she wanted to. Yes. You see, that was the key.
Without
any abuse.
And she describes in the book some of the problems that they had, but more from society as a whole rather than the running community itself. Yeah. I think that's the difference.
There's a long type that developed from there. Mm. If you live in a village, it was a different story. You knew what the life was about. But worldwide...
She describes gay life in the village in a way that certainly was an eye-opener to me. Yes. But it's extremely well written.
Well, if you lived in a village as many years as I did, it was just part of the normal thing of life.
But when I was doing that running in literature, I ranked that as one of the best running novels. That was at that date, 2003.
It's beautifully written. Yes.
And very insightful into that relationship. And they're not the obvious romantic couple because the guy's a militaristic track coach. Right. So all the time you're having to make those adjustments. So all credit to you. Let me shift on to something else, Vincent, because I want to get you talking about the environment because that's something that we all care about and something that running has also been a leader in my opinion. Your poems often, it's interesting, they're city poems, but quite often they're about parks and lawns and trails and it's kind of nature within the city. Let me just give a quick glimpse of it. Stand, oh, brushing trees, sycamore sentinels of the plain, frost-laden, wind trims your twig as bending to the northerly together we run, static you, sentient I, both a movement of life along the flowing river east. You guard fruited brown buttonballs. They hang full seed, for sun warmth drying to spread among new life in spring. Whistle with me as crunching snow footfalls under my path. Sorry about my non-New York accent, because it really, your poetry really requires that a kind of New York pithiness to it.
And that's East River Park.
Yes, and that's East River Park.
Yeah.
But so tell me about how important that is to you, the sense of running as something that puts you in contact with the earth, with nature, with the elements. You told us a little while ago, you ran at 11:30 at night, and you came out of your lab, and then you would run round
Battery, yeah.
So at night, when the city was, as it were, almost shut down, tell us about how important is that aspect of running to you?
Running itself is important. I run everywhere. Every place I go, I run. Regardless what the streets are, what goes on. Yeah, what's interesting, though, you can always find a park in the cities. And parks are great, beautiful places. And if you want to unload, run any park. And I was running in Pittsburgh, and I come out of the hotel, and there was this little playground part there, and I had nothing else to do, so I ran around the playground for 5 miles, but it was in a park. And the guy says, "What are you, nuts?" He says, "Why?" He says, "There's a big park over here." And I said, "But I haven't got time to do that." He says, "I don't see people around this park." I said, "Well, I'm having fun," and then that's my tourist way. I leave a hotel and I run this way for one run and that way for another run. That's my way of touring, but what it does for the head is beautiful.
And I think you have similar views to mine about wanting to run on dirt,
Oh yes.
where it's possible. Tell us about Putnam Park.
Oh well, Putnam Park is really the Putnam Railroad that ran up from Grand Central all the way up to Putnam, New York. Okay, so when I was a kid, it was a railroad. Okay, it was functional, and then gradually went to a rush hour situation only, and then bingo, they get rid of the computer part of it, and there was only big freight trains running, and then it stopped. And the railroad track was a long time, and finally they took the railroads out. We could run on it. So it's one of my favorite runs. Unfortunately, Yonkers paved it because they didn't take care of it. So they put blacktop on it. But now the bikers love it, and they can bike up 30 miles following this track. But running on dirt is that sense of feeling that the earth is right there, you know. And even a part of the park that's still dirt over there, you brush against the roses, you brush against the flowers, you brush against trees hanging over you in the rain. The sense of you putting together all of what nature is, and that's what we are. We're nature.
Yeah.
And feeling it. I like running in the rain, and then drip on me and on the face and so forth. Gives you that sense of just cleanliness.
And of contact with that real world that is not a man-manufactured world.
Yeah. And parks are the only place you can do it anymore in the world. It's and if they keep those paths, many European parks still have the dirt paths. It's great. In the United States, they're disappearing completely.
Oh, well, shortly after I first came to live in the United States, I published this theory in a New Zealand magazine when I said the great ambition of this great nation is to concrete over the entire continent, because it seemed everywhere I went there were these beautiful trails, and the next thing you know, it had been blacktop or it was concrete.
Oh, that was the goal of the Eisenhower administration. Mm-hmm. Make tar.
We need very quickly to talk about your scholarly life. Because you're a biologist,
yes,
and you're a specialist, among other things, in biogeochronology,
yes,
which is something that I happen to know about because I worked on the literature of Darwinism, and that sense of time. You teach a course on time, is that right?
I teach a course on biogeochronology in which time is the first part.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. So, and you're still teaching. Obviously, you're 85, 86.
Pretty soon 86.
You're still teaching, so obviously it's important to you.
Oh, yes. It's fun.
And your students, I looked you up on, Rank My Professor or whatever it's called, and they describe you as scary at first, but then great. So
I'm scary because I actually talk about the topic, I talk about learning, I talk about the brain, why it's fun to learn to do this stuff, and you have to study.
Yeah, you can be forgiven. And let's just get one or two more personal things. What would be your proudest moment or achievement in this lifetime of contributing to running?
Well, I think getting long distance running recognized as a sport. It was part of track and field. We got it out of track and field, made it separate as a men's sport, but we called it men and women's long distance running in the beginning until the women came in and formed women's long distance running out of track and field. That's one of the key things. And the realization that we could finally take amateur sport and show that every single person that's willing to lift their feet up can find running a relaxing, spiritual event.
That's really great. That's a legacy.
Yeah, that's the legacy.
That's the real legacy.
Yeah, so other things, doing all the rule changes I had to do, forcing people to think and liberated types in sports was very hard. We did that. We really made amateur athletics really amateur until it finally became professional.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a different era, but you made your contribution. So thank you for that contribution. Thank you for being so fascinating and telling us about it today. So Vincent Chiappetta, many thanks for all you've done. And from us, thank you to Will Sanchez and to Manhattan Neighborhood Network for hosting this broadcast today. Thank you.
I've been running on these trails since 1948. The one important thing about the trail is that it's dirt and it protects our legs from the adverse conditions of road running. If we change this thing into a concrete thing to fit the bicyclists, we're going to damage our ability to run and work out. This is totally a wrong thing to do, and I hope that you don't do it. I think that this is a wonderful natural environment here, and it's all grown up since the railroad has stopped, and it's very beautiful. And it's like running in a wilderness area. It's very good for the head. It's good for anybody that comes here. So why would you want to take down the trees and take on the things that are growing naturally? That's so beautiful for our psyche and for our peace of mind.